On December 4, 2005, a dog walker named David caught a horrific sight. A young woman was laid, unmoving, face down, under the sea wall on Prestwick Beach, Scotland. As everyone should, David contacted the police, who then arrived within 10 minutes of the report being made. From the belongings beside her, it was quickly found that the woman was Annie Borjesson, a Swedish woman who lived in Edinburgh, but she was 80 miles from home, so how did she get there? The day before she was found, Annie was excited to fly back to Sweden from her beloved home for a Christmas trip and was preparing for things to run smoothly once she returned to Scotland. She booked an appointment with her hairdresser for the following week and paid a month ahead of her rent. CCTV cameras caught her at Prestwick Airport, alone and heading towards check-in for her flight. For an unknown reason, Annie turned around and walked right out, heading towards the beach. The next time she was seen, she was found dead. Between then and her discovery, there is one report of a witness sighting, but it's unconfirmed and holds massive speculation. The Scottish authorities sent a letter to the Swedish embassy claiming a witness reported seeing someone matching Annie's description standing at the water's edge around 4:30. The witness later came forward, saying they never said that. Going back to David, the dog walker, he gave his statement to the police about 10 minutes after he placed the call. He recalled, "They said they'd get in touch with me if they needed me. I thought I would hear something eventually, that they'd contact me and get a bit more detail. It was surprising that they never actually did." This was highly concerning as he was their only witness as he found the body and they didn't contact him at all. It doesn't make any sense. Within 1 hour and 40 minutes, Annie's body was moved to a nearby mortuary. Detective Michael Neal, who was on duty that day, explained that they were in a race against time because of the tide. The day following the discovery, December 5th, a letter was written and dated from the Scottish police to Sweden authorities. In it, they claimed they suspected that Annie's cause of death was suicide, but her post-mortem had yet to be conducted. Her family denied the ruling and claimed that there was no case for suicide. Her mother couldn't stomach why her daughter would walk out to sea less than a mile from the airport she was set to fly home from. Once Annie's autopsy was performed, it concluded that her cause of death was most likely drowning. The report stated that there was no significant injuries or evidence of trauma, but the undertakers who handled her body say the opposite. The undertaker who handled sending back her body to Sweden wrote in a letter about the state they had received it. They said Annie had significant bruising to her body, which for reasons I cannot explain, I believe were not included in the autopsy report in the first place. They stated that the condition of her body was extremely poor. It added, "I find this to be quite unusual considering the circumstances of her death." Gun Danneberg, the undertaker who received Annie's body in Sweden, says she opened the coffin and saw finger marks around her neck and extensive bruising on her body, like someone had hit her. She also described Annie's beautiful long blonde hair she had when she was captured on CCTV was now roughly chopped, and there was a bald patch as though someone had grabbed it and just pulled it. "I have never experienced anything like this before. You don't forget. I think the family were in a state of shock. She couldn't have caused all those bruises herself." Tests were then performed on her body, finding microscopic creatures that appeared to have come from a freshwater environment. This is odd, considering she had supposedly drowned in the Firth of Clyde, which is salt water. Later, while working on the documentary, which was released in 2023, journalist Hazel Martin reached out and filed a Freedom of Information request for the photos taken during Annie's first post-mortem examination. She was refused, as it was not in the public interest for them to be released. This was the same way that Annie's family were denied the images as they weren't in the family's interest. When Annie's body made it back to Sweden, her family took pictures of the bruising and believed she was beaten, drowned, and then placed to stage a suicide at the beach. Hazel agrees with their theory, questioning why would Annie travel 80 miles from her home to where the water in the bay is extremely shallow and you have to walk half a mile to reach swimmable depths to end her life. Detective Michael Neal argued that a lot of families struggle to accept their loved ones have taken their own life. There was never anything at all in the whole investigation to indicate that there was any criminality involved in Annie's death, he said. According to this, the family refused to believe this due to the oddities found in the relation to her death, which they thought should still be investigated. Shortly before her death, Annie had told her friends that she had met a man claiming to be a New Zealand rugby player on the Scottish team, Martin Leslie, at a nightclub. She said he was very full on to the point she felt uneasy. A few days later, Annie was at her local swimming pool and the man showed up, watching her as she swam. She told her family in Sweden that she feared that the man was a sexual predator. The man was never tracked down, but if it wasn't clear, it wasn't Martin Leslie, who was in New Zealand at the time and is an actual rugby player. The police claim that Annie received no calls in the 3 days leading up to her death, but her mother called on the 1st to check in with her daughter, and a friend witnessed Annie take a phone call on December 3rd, right before she left for her Prestwick trip. 2 days before her death, Annie reportedly called family in Sweden from a payphone, saying she was worried that someone was listening to her calls. This case is still deemed as a suicide, but with all the oddities, what do you guys think?